In 1994, the tragic murder of Nicole Brown Simpson didn't just shock Los Angeles, it stopped the entire nation in its tracks. The prime suspect wasn't a random stranger lurking in the dark. It was Nicole's ex-husband, O.J. Simpson, one of the most famous athletes in America. What came next wasn't just a murder investigation, it was a cultural earthquake. A case that exposed dark secrets, divided the nation, and turned a courtroom into one of the most watched spectacles in modern history. Today, we're going back to the beginning, to Nicole Brown's life, her relationship with O.J., and how their story led to a tragedy that changed America forever. Hi, I'm Katie Ring, and this is America's Most Infamous Crimes. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'll take you deep into cases that have a lasting imprint on society and still haunt us today. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that button so you never miss an episode. Today, we'll be talking about the early life of Nicole Brown and how a chance meeting with O.J. Simpson set her life on a very different path. When we talk about Nicole Brown's death, it's usually framed in the context of a man accused of killing her. After all, everyone calls it the O.J. trial, and over the next few episodes, I'll get into that. But first, I want to tell you about the woman at the center of it all, and what was taken from her. Nicole spent the first few years of her life in Europe. Her dad, Lou, was stationed in West Germany with the U.S. Air Force in the 1950s, and when he fell in love with a woman named Judy, he decided to stay. So Lou left the Air Force and got a job working for a newspaper. He married Judy and they had two daughters, Denise in 1957 and Nicole in 1959. The two of them weren't just sisters, they were best friends. Denise and Nicole were always looking out for each other, which was a good thing because when they were still both toddlers, their lives changed in a big way. Sometime in the early 1960s, Lou decided to move the family back to the States. The Browns settled in Long Beach, California, about 30 miles south of LA. Lou made a lot of money working in real estate and insurance, and they needed every penny because the Brown family was about to keep growing. Lou and Judy had two more daughters, Dominique in 1964 and Tanya in 1970. Life was good, and Lou's job was even better. By the mid-70s, the Browns upgraded to a nicer gated community in SoCal. By this point, Nicole and Denise were in high school, and they were really starting to come into their own. Denise was homecoming queen one year, and Nicole was homecoming princess the next. But Nicole was a lot more than a pretty face. She was the kind of person everyone wanted to be friends with, and she realized that her looks and her personality could take her far in life. She thought she had what it took to become a model, so after graduating high school in May of 1977, she moved to LA to make that dream a reality. Nicole spent the next couple of months crashing at a friend's apartment. Along with her budding modeling career, she worked as a hostess at the Daisy, a trendy restaurant and nightclub in Beverly Hills. To her, it was just a job to pay the bills, but that job was about to change her life forever. One day in June of 1977, 18-year-old Nicole was working the morning shift when one of the most famous people on the planet walked in, O.J. Simpson. At the time, O.J. was a few weeks shy of turning 30, and he was already a football legend. To say he was a big deal would be an understatement. O.J. first burst onto the scene as a college player at the University of Southern California. After winning the Heisman Trophy, he went first overall in the 1969 NFL Draft. When Nicole met him 8 years later, O.J. was the star running back for the Buffalo Bills, where he'd been so successful that he was practically a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. But he was also making history off of the field. As a spokesman for Hertz Rental Cars, O.J. had become the first Black man ever hired for a major national television advertising campaign. O.J. was everywhere and everybody knew him. Or at least almost everyone. Because when O.J. walked into the Daisy, Nicole had no idea who he was. She just did her job, sat him and his friends at a table, and went back to work. But once she was back in the kitchen, her boss came sprinting over and filled her in. That was O.J. Simpson, the Juice. Even for a restaurant in the middle of Beverly Hills, this was a huge deal. After that, Nicole looked back at O.J. and he smiled at her. Years later, Nicole would talk about getting butterflies on the spot. OJ asked Nicole out pretty much immediately, and she was definitely interested. There was just one catch, though. He was still married to his high school sweetheart, Marguerite. Now, according to OJ, the marriage was already over. He and Marguerite were done with each other. Although legally, that wasn't really the case. They had been separated, but they weren't divorced yet. Still, Nicole gave OJ the benefit of the doubt and agreed to go on a date with him, and she quickly fell head over heels for him. OJ was older, sophisticated, charming, and insanely famous. He opened up a whole new world for Nicole, the one she'd been dreaming of for years. But this new world was OJ's, and she had to play by his rules, and there were a lot of them. Just a few months into dating, OJ moved Nicole into his house, which was fine since he was mostly based in LA. But Nicole wouldn't get a lot of time to enjoy it because OJ also made her travel with him to all of his games. Nicole went along with it, even though that meant putting her modeling career on pause. After all, she had OJ to take care of her, and there was still plenty of time to start up again if she wanted. But once she agreed, the real rules started. Allegedly, OJ insisted on signing off on anything Nicole wanted to buy. And if he didn't like Nicole's outfit anytime they went out, she had to change. Period. End of story. It was hard to argue when OJ was paying for everything in her life, but it wouldn't be long before more red flags started popping up, and they were impossible for Nicole to ignore. In early 1978, about 8 months into the relationship, OJ invited Nicole and her sisters to watch him play in Buffalo. At some point during the game, he looked up into the private box he'd gotten them and saw Nicole kissing one of her guy friends on the cheek, and OJ did not like that. After the game, he screamed at Nicole about how she'd embarrassed him. She spent the rest of the night crying in the bathroom, and things only got worse after that. According to Nicole's diary, she found another woman's earrings in her bed just a few months later, and that was something she was not going to let go of. So she confronted OJ and accused him of cheating on her. His response? Throwing her against the wall, hard enough to leave bruises. This may have been one of the earliest, if not the first instance of physical abuse in their relationship. And tragically, it was far from the last. Nicole knew she had to leave OJ, but that was easier said than done. The thing is, she wasn't the only one in her family who depended on him. OJ had gotten her dad a job running a Hertz rental car franchise in Laguna Niguel, and he'd even paid for Nicole's little sister, Dominique, to go to USC, his alma mater. So for the time being, Nicole decided to ignore the bad and focus on the good. By 1979, they'd been dating for 2 years. Nicole was 20 and OJ was 32. He decided the time was right to retire from the NFL and to finally officially divorce his wife. Although by that point, Nicole had already replaced Marguerite in OJ's life. Pretty much everyone in LA knew that he and Nicole were a package deal. And they weren't exactly keeping a low profile either. Think matching his and hers Ferraris. They also moved into a $5 million mansion in LA's Brentwood neighborhood on North Rockingham Drive. There were always athletes, celebrities, and beautiful women hanging around. It was constantly busy and the kind of place to be and be seen. Nicole loved being at the center of it all, but underneath all of the glitz and glamour, something much darker was brewing. In her diary, Nicole wrote about several more instances of physical abuse over the years. She called the cops to Rockingham a few times, but she never went through with pressing charges, and OJ was never arrested. Sometimes their fights got so explosive that Nicole would storm out of the house, or OJ would supposedly throw her out. Either way, she usually drove down to her parents' house in Orange County to let him cool down. But OJ always called and apologized, and Nicole always went back to him. She was about to hit her limit though, especially when it came to OJ's cheating. Rumors started spreading in the tabloids that he was seeing other women, which OJ of course denied, but Nicole didn't believe him. 5 years into their relationship, OJ told Nicole that he was going to lunch in Beverly Hills with a, quote, friend. Nicole wasn't buying that, so she followed him there, and when she pulled up, she saw OJ leaving the restaurant with a pretty young woman. Nicole had had enough. She let OJ have it right there in the parking lot, screaming at him and hurling insults at his date. At that point, things weren't looking good for them. But the next day, O.J. did something truly shocking. He proposed to Nicole, and she said yes. Nicole was ecstatic. In her mind, this was the solution to everything. If O.J. was willing to put a ring on it, it meant he was serious about changing. Nicole thought that once they were a married couple, the cheating, the lying, the abuse, it would all end. So on February 2nd, 1985, Nicole Brown said "I do" to O.J. Simpson, and their marriage seemed to be off to a great start. When O.J. was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame 6 months later, he thanked Nicole in his speech, saying how wonderful she'd made his life after the NFL. Nicole was right there in the audience, beaming up at him. She'd quickly taken on the role of the perfect wife. Beautiful, poised, and at that point, pregnant with their first child. People at the ceremony whispered about how lucky O.J. was to have her, and how lucky she was to have him. But Nicole knew something nobody else did. All of the promises O.J. had made about being calmer, being truthful, being faithful, they were all empty. Nothing had changed after they got married. He was still controlling, cheating, and allegedly abusive. And with a baby on the way, Nicole felt completely and utterly trapped. But when Nicole gave birth to their daughter, Sydney Simpson, in October of 1985, she was over the moon. She loved being a stepmom to O.J.'s children from his previous marriage, but she'd always dreamed about having a baby of her own. Still, the pregnancy hadn't been easy on her, especially when it came to O.J. Apparently, he was less than a supportive husband, to put it mildly. O.J. wanted Nicole to stay skinny and fit, even though she was growing a person inside of her. He called her a fat pig and even forced her to have a C-section because he thought it would stop the baby from ruining Nicole's body. But no matter how traumatizing O.J.'s behavior was, Sydney was the light of Nicole's life. Even when all hell was breaking loose in their marriage, she still had her daughter to put a smile on her face, and Nicole wasn't done having kids. In 1988, 3 years after Sydney was born, 29-year-old Nicole gave birth to a son named Justin. Just like before, O.J. was allegedly neglectful during the pregnancy and was cruel to Nicole about her body. And he didn't stop there. He also cheated on her with other women who he found more attractive. This time, Nicole kept quiet about it. As long as no one else knew about the reality of their relationship, she was fine to keep pretending. Her children were the most important thing to her, and she was focused on raising them the best she could. But she had no idea one of them was about to become a pawn in O.J.'s latest outburst. In December of 1988, just a few months after Justin was born, Nicole and O.J. went on vacation to Hawaii. They were with some friends and family, including Nicole's older sister, Denise. One day at lunch, a gay couple came over to their table to coo over little Justin. Nicole let one of the men hold her son, and he kissed the child on his forehead. Nowadays, it's advised that pretty much anyone but the parents don't ever kiss a baby, but back then, it was a pretty normal interaction. And Nicole didn't have control or know what the man was about to do. But when they got back to their room, O.J. exploded. He was furious with Nicole for letting the man kiss Justin, and it wasn't long before the argument turned violent. According to Nicole's diary, that fight ended with O.J. throwing her against the wall. He'd grabbed her so tightly she had bruises on her arms and had to wear long sleeves the next morning just to hide them. And that's not the kind of outfit you wear to the beach, even in December. And Nicole's sister Denise noticed. But when Denise asked Nicole about it, she waved her off and said it was nothing. Denise didn't push her on it because they were on vacation and she probably wasn't looking to get into a fight. The trip didn't have any more drama and they all flew back to LA like everything was fine. But when they got back, Denise would realize just how bad things had gotten. By late December, Nicole and O.J. were back in LA, ready to ring in the new year. It should have been a night to have fun and look forward to the future. But something happened and the party took a dark turn. In the early morning hours of January 1st, 1989, Nicole called the police. She and O.J. had gotten into a fight, a bad one. By the time officers arrived at Rockingham, Nicole was hiding in the yard with only sweatpants and a bra on. Clearly, she'd left the house in a rush and the officers could see why. Nicole had a black eye, her lip was split, and there was a handprint around her neck. She was terrified. She told the officers that her husband was going to kill her if they didn't do something. Meanwhile, O.J. came sauntering out in a bathrobe, like nothing was wrong. He ignored the police completely and shouted at Nicole to stay out of his bed, then added that he had 2 other women and he didn't need her anymore. But Nicole wasn't letting this go. And for the first time, the authorities arrested O.J. Simpson for abuse. He ended up pleading no contest to spousal battery, was fined $700 and ordered to go to counseling. All things considered, you could say it was barely a slap on the wrist. $700 wasn't exactly a lot of money for O.J., but it did change things for Nicole. Once O.J. was detained and taken down to the police station, Nicole called Denise to come over. When she got there, Denise was shocked to see the state her sister was in. She begged her to leave O.J. She wanted to know why Nicole was putting up with the violence. Nicole didn't have an answer for that, but she did ask Denise to take pictures of her so she had proof. As far as we know, Nicole never showed those photos to anyone, and O.J. didn't know they existed. Once he was out on bail, O.J. went back to their house on North Rockingham Drive, and Nicole stayed with him for another 3 years while the abuse allegedly continued, until Nicole finally hit a breaking point. There's no reporting on if there was a specific event that led Nicole to make the decision, or if she just had enough. But in February of 1992, at the age of 32, Nicole filed for divorce. It took 8 months of arguments, but in October of that year, Nicole and O.J. were officially over. Nicole got nearly $500,000 plus $10,000 a month for child support, which sounds like a lot, but considering O.J.'s wealth, it wasn't very much. But it was enough for Nicole to get out on her own. At first, she moved into a rental house near O.J.'s mansion, but she eventually bought her own condo. It was the first time she'd been on her own in 14 years. And without O.J. controlling every aspect of her life, she could finally be herself again. Nicole's loved ones said the change was massive. There was just a lightness about her. She was hanging out with friends again, went out dancing, went on vacations to Cabo, basically enjoying a normal life for the first time since she was a teenager. Life was good for Nicole, but she had a sneaking suspicion that O.J. hadn't moved on the way she had. And tragically for her, it wouldn't be long before her suspicions may have proved correct and ended in the most horrifying way possible. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure to come back tomorrow for our next episode on Nicole Brown Simpson. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at America's Most Infamous Crimes. Thank you for supporting the show.